Hey everybody, so this is Mike back again with the Delta 36-725T2. I posted a short video the other day when I first got it here, got it home and put together, was running it off my cord reel. Turns out, for anybody that saw that video, turns out the cord reel just isn't rated high enough, so not a big deal. Like I said, it wasn't a long-term solution anyway, just was purely for testing purposes. But so anyway, a lot of people that did see the video were asking for a more in-depth review. So this is that review there. So wanted to do a quick one here, kind of just talk about my thoughts and initial first tests on this saw. So initial testing is great. So for anybody watching, my comparison here is to a DeWalt. I think it was no, I'm not sure what model it was, but it really doesn't matter anyway. It was just a DeWalt job site saw, which I had no problems with. Just wanted something bigger, working on some bigger projects this year, and wanted something bigger. So I saw the previous model, was honestly set on buying that until not long after I found out this was coming out, so it was kind of worth the wait. Obviously, you know, this saw is a Lowe's exclusive. So I went to my local store. They didn't have any. I couldn't find one within 100 miles of me. I messaged Lowe's on Facebook actually to see what could be done, to see if Lowe's would pay to ship that saw down to me. They wouldn't do that, which actually I shouldn't say they wouldn't do that. They were actually able to find one a lot closer to me. A store only about 10-15 minutes away from me had one that was going to be their in-store display. Turns out I got lucky, it was still in the box, had them hold it for me, and went and picked it up later on that day. So anyway, initial thoughts, unboxing. It's packaged really well. Obviously you would expect something like this to be packaged well. Nothing inside was damaged, dented, scratched, anything like that. Putting it together took me, I don't know, about 2 hours or so. That's probably on the conservative side. I'm one that I tend to read the manual, I guess, and kind of go through it a little more thorough probably than most people do. At the same time, I did skip a couple of steps, and I goofed on a couple of things and had to take, like for instance, on this front rail, I'll try to point to it here. On this front rail here, you have to basically hook up the L bracket that's attached to the wings and the cast iron top. You have to hook up that whole thing in a couple of different steps before you can put that front rail on, and I had only done, I don't know, I'll call it part 1 of 2 before I put that bigger front rail on. So I had to go back and take that off, and then go back and put the front rail on, which was no big deal. So I ran this ran this saw over the weekend, cutting through really just a lot of the lumber you guys kind of see in the background here. Some thinner plywood. I do have some 3/4 inch birch plywood back there as well. I got some 2x4s, that kind of stuff, just kind of testing it on some different stuff. So initial thoughts, I did hook it up to just a shop vac with a 2.5 or 2.25 inch hose, whatever it is. Fits perfectly into the dust port in the back. Like any saw, the dust collection I thought was pretty good. I did still end up with some underneath the saw towards the base at the bottom, which to me, no big deal. And then obviously you always get some toward the top as well, depending on, this doesn't have overarm dust collection. It's not a saw stop, obviously. So doesn't have overarm dust collection, but again, to me, no big deal. Not anything that didn't take me an extra 2 minutes to clean up with the shop vac afterwards. So I didn't really have any issues putting it together, other than if you can see down here. So basically where the Delta sign or this piece here in the front, that kind of cuts in half right underneath of there, and those 4 legs with the wheels are a separate piece from the top half that's connected to the motor and the cast iron top. The only issue I had was there's basically holes in each of those legs so that you can put a screw in each leg, and so that a bolt and a nut, so that it stays together. I couldn't necessarily get it to line up really well, having the wheel, the thick movable wheel down here, having it on the other side, which is kind of what the box showed. That was the only issue. So I turned that around and have the wheel now on the left side, which honestly, I mean, in my opinion, I think it makes it a little easier to move around anyway, rather than trying to be on the other side, outside of that extension or the spreader bar, trying to reach my foot under there. I'm not a tall guy, so having to try to reach my foot under there to move the saw around, to me, would have been a little less comfortable. And then again, I don't really have any complaints other than this movable wheel down here. You can see the position that it's in now, and you can see how it's catching kind of on the welded black bracket that's on there. That's the wheel itself. It moves okay, but when you go to push it one way and then drag it back the opposite way, it spins, and then, like you can see down there, it gets caught on those brackets. And I don't know, I mean, there's no steps for it, there's no extra pieces to do anything with that wheel or anything like that. So I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong, or if it's something's just wrong with the caster or whatever. Maybe I don't know, maybe it's worth getting a because you can move that thing quite a bit, so maybe it's worth just upgrading to a slightly bigger caster and going from there. But not a huge deal for me. It is, like I said, it's something that I'm not going to move this saw around a whole lot anyway. I would imagine most other people aren't either. But again, so no issues. I've got I have a Diablo 50 tooth combination blade in there as well. I swapped out the blade, the stock blade, almost as soon as I got everything unboxed, just out of habit, really. The switch is really nice too. You guys can kind of see that here. I'll do some close-ups of some of this stuff here towards the end as well. The switch is really nice. Power button's easy to get to. The shut-off button is really easy to bump with your knee. I'm not even a tall guy, and I kind of got it more with my thigh than my knee, but either way, just a nice extra feature there. Both of the wheels for both the tilt and to raise the blade, they move really well, really easily. They lock in place really well. There's on the side, and I'll show you guys here in a second, there's onboard storage for the fence, which I'm probably never going to use. I'll probably always leave it on there. And then on the other side, there's storage for the blade guard and the wrench to change the blade, as well as that can be used as a place to store extra blades as well. One thing that I will touch on, and I'll show you guys here quickly in just a second, the slots for this on the cast iron top for like where the miter gauge goes is really nice. They're T-slots, and the miter gauge is a pretty heavy duty. I mean, it's not super heavy duty, but it's better than just a couple of pieces of aluminum or plastic put together. The miter gauge is put together really nice, and it fits in there really well. And again, like I said, it's a T-slot, so you put it in there the way I have it showing right now. You can't just go in there and pull it out. It just doesn't do that. It's in there. You gotta actually slide it in and out. Slides really nice. Doesn't come out in the front or the back. So that's just one nice feature as well. The flip down top again, the flip down fence for small pieces is really nice as well. I can show you guys that here in a second. Also, the only small adjustments I had to make were the stops for 0 degrees and 45. They were off just slightly, and I did have to adjust the fence as well, so it was off either an eighth or a quarter of an inch, something like that. But again, that is super easy to do. There are some plastic screws. I'm going to take this off the tripod and move you guys a little closer now. There are some plastic screws that made that super easy to do, and all I did was take a 6-inch combination square and take part of that apart, put the blade up, measure against the tooth, and go from there. And you can see here, these are these screws that I'm talking about. So you just loosen these 2 screws here, and then this little plastic piece can move back and forth. And what I did, when you lock in the saw, it does move just slightly, left or right, depending on, basically how you have it moved. But it's really just as easy as that to lock down. Again, I'll show you guys the flip down fence here. So this lifts up and just slides into place just like that. So again, this is something that you'd probably want to obviously use on the left-hand side of the saw. But again, it's really nice. I did try it out a little bit just to see what I thought. Fits in there nice. Again, here's the miter gauge. It's got all the stops on here, and like I said, fits in there really well. It's not coming out. The storage on this side down here, I just have the cord wrapped around there for now, but that would be where you store your fence. And then again up here, this little slot right here is where the miter gauge goes. And then what's new, I believe, on this saw is this little red button here. This is a motor reset button. And so what that is basically if your breaker goes and you go down and you reset your breaker, the saw is not automatically going to kick back on. You have to push that button back first before you can start the saw up again. So just a kind of a nice safety feature there. Come around to the other side, some of the stuff I was talking about here. So I've got push stick there, as well as blade guard, and then there is the wrench. And again, this is all locked in here. Can't do it one-handed, but so that would just loosen. That wrench comes right off, and that's where you can store an extra blade as well. So, you know, I ran this through, like I said, this weekend. Ran through with a dado stack. I think I did all the way up to just a 1/2-inch dado, because that was really what I had put together at the time. And no issues running through anything that I put through it. And again, ran through a couple of different. I did have some spare oak laying around that I ran through that was old and pretty dried out, and no issues. Like I said, nothing at all. Let's see. Blade comes up really, really smooth. Obviously, you would expect a smooth operation there, and you know, same thing. The fence slide, super nice. Ran it right into the blade there, which was a mistake, but anyway. So again, very, very pleased with this saw, and for the price, I think it's hard to beat. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'll probably run through another video here, just running through some different type of stock, just to show anybody else what the features are. But otherwise, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Very happy, very pleased with the saw. Like I said, I think anybody looking to upgrade from a job site saw to something a little bigger, a little beefier, this is definitely something to take a look at. I was on the Lowe's website yesterday looking for something else, and I saw a guy that gave this saw 1 star. It was the only review. Somebody gave it 1 star because they said it can't be wired for 240. I haven't verified that because I have no intention of doing that, but something to the effect of Delta came right out and said that you would need an electrician to swap the motor over to 240, and it had something to do with the new magnetic switch or whatever. But that that doesn't bother me. Like I said, I have no intentions of running this on 240. I'll always stick with 120. So, but otherwise, again, kind of just going back to some of this stuff. The rails are super nice. They're very, very similar, if not the exact same, to the first generation model. You still have 30 inches here, which obviously it actually looks like you go a little further. And then you've got, looks like, sorry for the lighting here, about 15.5 inches on the left side as well. So, all in all, good saw. Like I said, here's cast iron top. The wings are still the stamped steel, I think is what they are. I could be wrong, but I'm not a metal expert by any means. But they were pretty heavy duty. They weren't light. I thought, looking at them, I thought they'd be a lot lighter than they were, but they actually had some heft to them. So, maybe they increased the gauge of the steel or something like that. Like I said, I don't know, but they were heavier duty than what I anticipated. So, give you guys a quick shot here of the back if I can. That's the chute there. Like I said, most of the dust came right through there, no problem. I still had a little bit on the floor, kind of right underneath, and again, obviously some came up through the top. There's a little bit of the motor there. I will take so what looked a little different to me, and again, I don't have the obviously the first generation to compare it to, but what I noticed a little different here was kind of this mesh, and I think that's just to help keep a lot of the dust collection to go down into the chute there. You see here also spindle lock, which is really nice. I've seen some that have basically just a different type of mechanism to remove the blade. And for me, I much prefer the spindle lock. I prefer that on a router as well, as opposed to using 2 different wrenches. So again, just not a necessity by any means, but just a nice added feature, something nice to have. So Didn't have any issue. I've seen a couple others where on the previous model people had issues with you know, the riving knife here not aligning right away with the blade. To me, mine was aligned right out of the gate. No adjustments needed, which was super nice.